All right, welcome back to the Northridge Sports Channel. Today's episode is the start of a new series, a series that I would like to call Game of Goats. Nothing like Game of Thrones, by the way. Maybe that was a little bit of inspiration for the name. But anyway, basically, this is a continuation of the podcast where I talked about the top 10 teams of all time. And then I took each of those teams and I as a thought experiment decided what would it be like if we reconstructed those teams with the most similar players in today's game and put them together all on each individual team that would reassemble essentially the equivalent of the OG original team. And so I decided I wanted to test this out and see what would happen if you take those greatest 10 teams of all time and you put them up against these newly created teams and had them face off. Which teams would come out on top and which teams would maybe not do as well. The only way we can find out is to simulate it in 2K and have them play against each other. So I created basically a fantasy season mode, a franchise mode where they'll play through an entire season with all of these teams together in the NBA. Now, I did a bunch of unique constructions to make this work, and you'll see in a minute. But basically, I had to add, these 10 historic teams, and then also put the players that are going to be, their equivalent of today's NBA on those teams of their own construction, and then the remaining players I sort of like, basically through a draft pool, sorted the remaining players at random on different teams. So you'll see that in a minute. I'm gonna showcase each one of the teams for you in a minute. It did take a while to like put this together. It took surprisingly longer than I was expecting, so it was a little bit of a painstaking process, but it's all worth it because I think this will be a pretty fun series. And then I'm going to explain, my part in it as well because I will be simulating a majority of the games, just so that the computer can kind of like auto simulate what would happen without, I should say, with minimal user input of my own. But I will be playing some games as well, so you can see that happen as well. So I guess let's just hop right on into it, and I'll explain some more as we go. All right, all right. So this is in no particular order. I think these might be in alphabetical order with the team names, but I'm gonna show you the compilation of all the teams. So this is the '90s Houston Rockets, led by Hakeem Olajuwon. They also had Clyde Drexler on the team, Kenny the Jet Smith, Otis Thorpe, Vernon Maxwell, and if you're wondering why is Kelly Oubre on the team, so the way I did this was I took for the most part the starting five from each one of those original teams. So minus whoever else was coming off the bench, I really didn't worry about. In some cases, there were a six man, but there was only a few teams that had like a six man that was really important. So I felt like that player was vital to being on the team. So in the cases of a six man, you will see a sixth guy from the history of the NBA featured on one of these teams. But besides that, you will just see the starting five from these historic teams, and then you will see the rest of the team just filled out with like modern NBA players. And I let the computer kind of randomize the selection of those players. So like Kelly Oubre at random, he just ended up being with the Houston Rockets. So I don't know how that'll really play out or influence the outcome much, but I figure since he's not a starter, whoever else is on the team shouldn't matter much. But you got Kelly Oubre, I don't know, Casey Wallace, Luke Kennard, whatever, whatever. A lot of these players aren't too important off the bench, and like I said, the majority of the impact of games won will be this starting five. Let's move on. Okay, so then the teams that were not either the historic teams that I listed as part of the greatest 10 and the 10 recreated historic teams of modern day players. So any of the teams that aren't that are just a random selection of current players. So whatever other current players in today's modern NBA will also be playing alongside of these teams. So you got the 10 historic teams, the 10 newly constructed teams. That's 20 teams. Now the NBA has a total of 30 teams normally. So that leaves 10 other teams that the rest of the players in the NBA would end up on. What I ended up doing was adding a total of six extra teams in total. The way you can construct your league or my NBA or whatever, you can add expansion teams, and so that's essentially what I did. And my logic behind that is since I'm adding, if you take the 30 teams in the NBA and I'm adding 10 brand new teams to on top of those 30 teams, that would essentially be like 40 teams. And or if you end up with just 30 teams, that leaves or not 30, yeah, if you end up with just 30 teams in the total NBA, that would leave all the remaining players that aren't either part of these 10 that got added or from history and or the 10 of the ones that were a reconstruction of players all over the league. That will leave the remaining players all on the remaining 10 teams, and I felt like that might be a little too stacked. So I kind of wanted to disperse the talent a little bit, a little more. So basically, I added some teams, and I don't know how that's going to impact the outcome, but I pretty much did it for fun. So there's three teams in each conference that was added, one in each of the divisions. So there's a in the East you got the Central Division, you got the Northeast and Northeast and the Southeast. So this is a team that got added in the Central Division. So this is the St. Louis Sound, and since this was a random draft, you can notice that there's players randomly on this team. So you got LaMelo Ball, Pascal Siakam, Trey Murphy, Walker Kessler, Chris Middleton. That's their starting five. Off the bench, you got Emmanuel Quickly, Miles McBride, and we won't go down the list naming every single player, but that's the remainder of the team. All right, moving on. Okay, so now we got the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs have Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Bruce Bowen, and I ended up putting Tiago Splitter as the center position. I was trying to remember like who was Tim Duncan's primary center that played with him through a lot of his career, and honestly, this was the guy I was thinking of. This Tiago Splitter. I didn't even remember his name, but obviously people most famously remember David Robinson at the beginning of Duncan's career. Tiago Splitter was more so at towards the later end of his career, but I just sort of settled on him since he was kind of the guy that came to mind when I created this team lineup. So he's there, and then also as a six man, Danny Green. So they got Danny Green. Now they just so happen to have Alex Sarr and a few other people that kind of round out the team off the bench. But like I said, probably not as big of factors as this starting five. Next, we got this is another random team that was created by the computer in the draft. So we got Evan Mobley, Rudy Gobert, Jalen Green, Josh Giddey, DeAndre Hunter, Shaden Sharp off the bench, and that's kind of the rest of the bench there. All right, moving on. All right, so okay, so here's another unique thing. So when I was creating all these like extra expansion teams, um, I really wanted to bring the Seattle Supersonics back into the NBA. And so I created the Seattle Supersonics. This was the one team that I kind of messed up a little bit when I was creating this draft. Every other team is that I added. So the other five that I added were purely expansion teams, meaning that they had no players. So they had to be completely randomly selected through the draft. When I added the Seattle Supersonics, I actually literally added the 95-96 Supersonics, which added Gary Payton and Sean Kemp to the league. So they're in this league. I don't know how much that's going to impact it again. I just kind of left it in there for fun. It adds a couple more like solid players that can kind of fill out the league. So it isn't purely just all modern players that these historic teams will be facing. The historic teams just so happen to also will be playing a couple of the Seattle Supersonics players, just kind of sprinkled in the league, I guess you could say. All right, but this team is the um, like the reconstructed '80s Boston Celtics. So we got the OG Boston Celtics, and this is the new modern Boston Celtics essentially. So Marcus Smart represents Dennis Johnson. So Marcus Smart is playing the point guard. Derek White essentially will represent Danny Ainge. Luca is going to represent Larry Bird. Alperen Sengun is going to represent Kevin McHale. And then DeAndre Ayton is representing Robert Parrish. So you kind of get that. If you've been watching the video so far, this will make sense. um, so yeah, so that's the reconstructed team. It's kind of interesting to see like the overalls of certain players compared to their OG counterparts that they're supposed to be kind of matching. It's also kind of interesting that Marcus Smart and Aiden and Derek White either were or are actual Boston Celtics players. So Derek White obviously is currently with the Boston Celtics. So it's kind of interesting that I chose him, but but I really like Sengun and Aiton as like the big men at the 4 and the 5, and I think they're a nice matchup um, as like the Kevin McHale Robert Parrish combo or whatever, and then like I said, Luca compared to Larry Bird. And what I will be doing on some episodes is when the two teams match up, their original versus their the new clone of the team. I'm specifically gonna let the computer play those games, and we'll just kind of watch the matchup and like see how they play against each other. So I'm really curious to see that, to see the OG Celtics versus versus this new Celtics matchup. So and then, yeah, rounding off the bench, it's just other random players that just sort of like filled out the squads. All right, moving on. Okay, so this is Shaq and Kobe's Lakers. Now we got two OG Laker teams. I let Showtime Lakers be on the actual Lakers, and I let Shaq and Kobe's Lakers be on the expansion team in San Diego. So their team is the San Diego Surf. You got Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. You got Robert Ory, Derek Fisher, Rick Fox. Also, I forgot if I didn't mention this in my previous video, but Horace Grant was on the team too. So I put him in as the sixth man. Um, so anyway, and they just so happen to have D'Angelo Russell, which is kind of interesting. And the rest of the bench, like I said, uh, not too like great of players, but they won't be playing significant minutes anyway. So, but it would be really curious to see how does Shaq and Kobe, how would this team do in today's NBA, matched up against some of the modern players and modern teams, as well as the Showtime Lakers. They'll get a chance to match up against them. They'll get a chance to match up against Jordan's Bulls, the Golden State Warriors with Stephen and KD, and their counterpart, the clone Shaq and Kobe. So that'll be interesting to see how those matchups play out. Anyway, moving on. We got this. This is another just auto created team of essentially the leftover players in the NBA. If they weren't part of the OG team or part of the new clone teams, if you will, um, they were just remaining players that were drafted to the rest of the teams or the expansion teams. So James Harden is on this team with Norman Powell, Paul George, Miles Bridges, Nas Reed. I actually kind of like this lineup, and it's kind of funny because you got three guys that were pretty much Clippers, so it's almost like a Clippers lineup all over again. Now they happen to be on the Thunder team. Again, this was just kind of randomized, so they just sort of randomly ended up here. But obviously, you still have James Harden and Norman Powell on the current Clippers, and Paul George, the former Clipper, but he's reunited it seems, and they got Miles Bridges and Nas Reed, which I like. I like that combo with them as well.
Daddy, Fia fall down and hurt herself. Fia fall down and hurt herself.
Okay, all right. Expect some interruptions. That just kind of comes with the territory of being a dad and a gamer. All right. Yeah. So I like this team. Off the bench, they got Jordan Poole, which I kind of like. Jordan Poole is probably in his rightful position as a six man. Seems like he's played his best NBA basketball as a six man. Although I think he's kind of getting comfortable in his role with the Wizards, playing more minutes, being in the starter role, being the focus of other teams' defensive lineups and stuff. So anyway, not to get too much into the the teams that aren't the main focus, I guess you could say. But we're gonna look at all of them together. So here's another recreated team, or not recreated team, but just random team. Now this is one of the ones that has Sean Kemp. It has one of the Seattle SuperSonics on it. So Sean Kemp's in this league. He's playing alongside Zach Levine, Dejounte Murray, Onyeka Okongwu. Hope I said that right. Anthony Simons. Hmm, interesting. They got oh yeah, and then they got Andrew Wiggins as well. I guess Simons will be coming off the bench. Wiggins would be starting small forward. It looks like. All right, and that's the rest of the lineup. You know, so again, it'd be kind of curious to see like how some of these other teams fare. I don't. I would assume they're not gonna be like as competitive, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll just see. Have to see what kind of impact they'll have in the league. All right, here's another team of just random players. So we got Tyrese Halliburton, we got Chet Holmgren, we got Colin Sexton, Peyton Pritchard, who honestly he's pretty good. Peyton Pritchard's pretty good. He's been playing better and better in today's NBA. So I think he recently like dropped like 40 points, something like that. Had a big game, and that's I don't think he's even one of the main guys, main starters. So he might be I don't know. It might be too early to to prop him up or whatever, but he might be one of the future you know stars or top players. Got Brooke Lopez. This is kind of interesting. They got Chet at the four and Lopez at the five, so they got a little bit of a twin tower kind of action going on. And Tyrese Halliburton's a pretty good size point guard as well. So they got Benedict Mathern, and then the rest of the bench again. You know, they're gonna be bench role players, nothing too significant. All right, moving on. All right, so this team is one of the expansion teams. This is the Las Vegas Venom. This team is essentially the Bulls equivalent. So we got Kawhi Leonard. Now, Kawhi Leonard is supposed to be Scottie Pippen. It's interesting that he's actually the best overall rated player on the team, with Jimmy Butler playing the shooting guard, which is essentially the Michael Jordan comparison. Got Drew Holiday as like Ron Harper. Got Ivica Zubac at the center position, and then you got Franz Wagner, which is supposed to be Tony Kukoc. Now, what's interesting is I made a little mistake when I made this league. Uh, I I ended up putting a couple of duplicates in the league. One of those being there's two LeBron teams. There's a Miami Heat LeBron team, and then there's like a newly created LeBron team, which is supposed to be like the copy or clone of that Miami team. So both teams have LeBron on it. I just took two of the best LeBrons that I could pick and put them as essentially duplicate LeBrons. It'd be really really interesting because like what if both end up being all stars or something? It's gonna be like two LeBron. It'd be kind of weird. I suppose with duplicates. There's also two different Dennis Rodmans because there's Bulls Dennis Rodman and then there's the Detroit Pistons Dennis Rodman. So two OG teams that Dennis Rodman was famously on, and I essentially have both copies of Dennis Rodman, the Bulls Rodman and the Detroit Pistons Rodman. And then the mistake is I was supposed to make two different Draymond Greens. There's the Warriors Draymond Green that plays for the Warriors, and then I was gonna make another copy of Draymond Green that's supposed to be Dennis Rodman for the Bulls. Now, in the process of making this video, it's messed up when you're doing the draft. If you make any kind of mistake, you're gonna have to just start over from the beginning. And I had to do that a couple times from mistakes that I made. I decided at the end I was just gonna leave Dennis Rodman out of the team, but I have a Dennis Rodman substitute. The Dennis Rodman substitute is Bobby Portis. Now, Bobby Portis's overall rating is not as high as Franz Wagner, which means he'll actually be coming off the bench. For me personally, I don't know if that makes the biggest difference in the world, because he is essentially going to be the sixth man. He's going to be main guy in rotation. So you can imagine this will still be somewhat of the Bulls matchup, but instead of Draymond Green, you have Bobby Portis, which to me is not a bad substitute for the like Dennis Rodman comparison. But you could argue he's like a worse Dennis Rodman. He is taller than him, so they physically don't exactly match up as well as I think Draymond would. But I do think you have like a better Tony Kukoc in Franz Wagner. So it kind of balances out. I just decided in the end that I like this as the team matchup, and I'm gonna leave it like this as opposed to having just duplicate Draymond. So there's only one Draymond in the league, but there's some duplicates of at least a couple other players. Anyway, moving on. So then the rest of the bench, um, not too important players essentially. So I'm just showing you each team in their entirety. Moving on. So now we have the Golden State Warriors. This is the the real OG Draymond at his best, at his peak Draymond. So we got Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Draymond. Um, he's a random addition to the team. So we got JaVale McGee after the starting five. Also, by the way, I think Andre Iguodala is not in this 2K for some reason. I don't know if 2K lost the rights to having Andre Iguodala in the game, but whatever happened, Iguodala's not in here. Once the draft was kind of concluding, there was just random players left, so they ended up with Denny Advia. I don't even know how to say this dude's name. But so they ended up with him on the team. I don't think he's a bad six man, but he'll be somebody coming off the bench. Um, and then this is the rest of the lineup. They randomly got Pods, so I thought that was kind of cool. So Pods is on the Warriors as well. The rest of the players, nothing too spectacular with the rest of the bench. All right, moving on. All right, so this is another team that is just random players that was left over. This is one of the better teams in my opinion, mainly because of John Morant. So John Morant in the current NBA didn't fit on one of the clone teams, so he's just on one of the other random teams. He ends up on this Washington Wizards squad through the draft. So they got John Morant, Brandon Ingram, Laurie Markkinen, Derek Lively, and Kobe White as the starting five. Off the bench, they actually got Zach Edey. So that's kind of interesting. Pretty good big man. And that's the rest of the bench. All right, moving on. Oh, all right. So that's all the players. So okay, so now 76ers. Now 76ers, this is uh the 90s Houston Rockets equivalent. So Embiid is like the Hakeem Olajuwon of today's NBA. We got Donovan Mitchell as sort of like the Vernon Maxwell. DeRozan is the uh, so many names. Clyde Drexler. He's the Clyde Drexler equivalent. De'Aaron Fox is Kenny the Jet Smith, and Kevon Looney is essentially playing the Otis Thorpe. So then the rest of the bench is random. Keegan Murray is supposed to be Robert Ory. So Robert Ory is another guy that I was supposed to make a I think I was supposed to make a duplicate of him too. I forget. I don't know. But I think there's just one. I think there's just one Robert Ory. Anyway, this took a long time to like construct and put together. It took me some hours. I found out kind of like later on there's probably a couple other ways I could have did this as opposed to putting all the players in like this one player pool and then drafting them all to different teams. I could have just put an entire team, historic team, into the NBA. But again, that probably would have took some figuring out too. But whatever. I don't know. In future videos, I might do it that way. But yeah, this is the rest of the lineup, rest of the bench. So not the most significant players or whatever. But as a starting five, I think that's a pretty solid starting five. I like this lineup. All right, moving on. This is another random team. You got Trey Young, Scotty Barnes, Cam Thompson, Daniel Gafford, Dylan Brooks, Stephon Castle off the bench. So show you the rest of the players. I'll try to move a little quicker through this. Let's go. This next team. So this team is the Showtime Lakers clone. This ended up being one of the expansion teams. They're on the Honolulu Breeze. So apparently this is going to be an NBA team in Hawaii. I don't know logistically how that would work in real life because they would literally have to fly in and out of Hawaii for all their games. That would be crazy. I think in real life, you know. I don't know if there would ever be a team in Hawaii for that reason. for logistics reasons for NBA. But it's not that it's impossible to do. But man, is that a lot of extra flying for players on top of what they already do probably anyway. But anyway, so Wembanyama is the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of today's NBA. Zion is the James Worthy. Ben Simmons is Magic Johnson. C.J. McCollum is Byron Scott. And Vanderbilt is AC Green. Now, there's another player. Actually, there's not another player on this team. Now that I think about it, I don't know. So this is. I'm actually not even sure who this is. But he's their six man. I'll talk about the other guy when I get to the actual Showtime Lakers. But this is the equivalent Showtime Lakers of today. I'm really curious to see how this would actually match up with the OG Showtime Lakers. It'd be really really cool to see like Ben Simmons at the point guard versus Magic Johnson at the point guard, and then Kareem at the center versus Victor Wembanyama at the center. At the center, it ought to be an interesting matchup to say the least. So moving on. So we got the Shaq and Kobe clone. We got Giannis Antetokounmpo, Devin Booker, Mike Conley as I guess Derek Fisher. Although Mike Conley, I didn't think about this either, but prime Mike Conley was way better in my opinion than Derek Fisher. No offense to Derek Fisher, still a really good player. Just Mike Conley's just better. He can do so much more as a point guard. So maybe not the most fair comparison in that sense, but I think it balances out since I think Shaq and Kobe are better than Giannis and Booker as a duo. Then we got Cam Johnson, Tobias Harris, and then off the bench, Santi Aldama. Got Wendell Carter Jr. They got Lonzo Ball, which is kind of interesting. And then that's the rest of the bench. All right, moving on. Now we got the OG uh, Jordan and Pippen Bulls. Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Tony Kukoc, Ron Harper, and Luke Longley. So, yeah, Kukoc would essentially be coming off the bench behind Rodman. Um, so obviously that's a little bit of a difference from the modern equivalent team or whatever. We got Mo Wagner as their backup big. Um, and that's the rest of the bench. They got Derrick Rose, which is kind of interesting. This is an old Derrick Rose, but he's doing a farewell tour with the with the '90s Bulls apparently. So back in Chicago. All right, moving on. Okay, another random team: Carl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Jalen Johnson, Ty Jerome, Quentin Grimes, Karis LeVert, and the rest of the bench. Some of these teams to me were pretty interesting to see the lineups or whatever. But anyway, all right, now we got the OG Celtics. Um, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Danny Ainge, and I added Bill Walton as their six man off the bench because Bill Walton was part of that 80 squad, and maybe not as good as he was with the Trailblazers, but still, I think he was a player with a lot of talent and probably added something to the team. So I threw him in there, and then they got some just random dudes off the bench. They got Hershey Hawkins, which I think is comes from that Seattle SuperSonics team. And then the rest of the players you can see not too significant, but that's the rest of their bench. Now, another mistake since I'm just airing out my mistakes. When I did the draft, I accidentally had Johnson on some random team, and so and I forget the name of the dude, but I had some other player. and I had to manually trade them after I completed the draft. So that's a whole another story. But either way, Dennis Johnson is on his rightful team now, and that was a mistake I couldn't I couldn't let just remain unfixed. So I fixed that one. Anyway, moving on. So this team is the clone team of Boston's big three Celtics. That's interesting because there's a huge rivalry with Chris Paul and Rondo. So it'd be interesting when the the big three Celtics with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. It'll be interesting to see when they match up against their clone matchup. Since Rondo and Chris Paul will be the point guards, and they'll have to go head to head to see who's better, I guess, between the two. But you got Jason Tatum as Paul Pierce, Jaren Jackson Jr. as Kevin Garnett. You got Desmond Bain as Ray Allen, and Clint Capella as I think Kendrick Perkins. I think it is. I don't know. We'll have to look at that, and then just random dudes off the bench. So they ended up randomly with Brandon Clark, Max Strus. That's kind of the rest of the bench lineup. Not too significant. Gordon Hayward apparently is still in the league as well. A bit old, but he's still in the NBA. All right, moving on. Okay, another random team. Cade Cunningham, Julius Randle, Bradley Beal, R.J. Barrett, Isaiah Hartenstein. So, some of these random teams, they also got Fred Van Fleet, Grady Dick, all right, and then other random dudes off the bench. Now, it's interesting with some of these like auto random created teams. Some of them came out good. Some of them are like very mediocre, and some of them don't look too good at all. Like they don't look like they're gonna win many games. This one's one of those like kind of mid teams. Like I don't think they're the greatest. It's really Cade I think that's carrying them. To me that looks good. The rest of the lineup I have no idea if Bradley Beal and R.J. Barrett if I mean, how Julius Randle, how good they're gonna be matched up with a lot of these other teams. I guess we'll see. We'll see. Another random team. This one has Kristaps Porzingis at the five, Tyrese Maxey as his point guard. Oh, this was another team that had Seattle Supersonics players. So they got Deadlift Shrimp. Um, they got Christian Braun, and they got Rui Hachimura. So interesting lineup. Don't know how well they'll do. Off the bench, Scoot Henderson. So this was the guy that accidentally got swapped with Dennis Johnson in the draft. Dennis Johnson ended up here, and Scoot ended up on the OG Celtics by mistake, and so I swapped them. So Scoot Henderson is here. He's going to be the backup point guard. It looks like, and this is the rest of the team. A little bit of a white team, if I do say so myself. Have a very Caucasian lineup of players. Yeah. So the bench and then and then the starting five. So anyway, moving on. All right, so this is Miami Heat LeBron team essentially. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Udonis Haslam, Mario Chalmers, who who's wasn't really that great of a player. I mean, he was definitely the weak link in the lineup. It seems like. Then off the bench, just random dudes. Like nobody too significant. But to be honest, I think with this team, as with most of the teams, they're really going to rely on their starting five and how well that starting five could compete with the rest of the league. So, and it will be interesting to see LeBron versus LeBron. See how that matchup would be. But can LeBron guard LeBron? We'll see. All right. Okay, so this team is an interesting team. This is a clone team of the Warriors. I don't think they're nearly as good as as the original Golden State Warriors, but you got Dame Lillard as the Steph Curry equivalent. You got Jalen Williams as the Klay Thompson equivalent. Bam is gonna be Draymond essentially. Bol is gonna be Kevin Durant. Obviously, probably not as good as KD, but I think interesting just because of his height. You're going to be really, really tall playing at the small forward position with Bam at your four, and then we haven't even seen the five man yet. This is actually going to be their six man, and then the five is Nicholas Claxton. So you got Claxton and Bam protecting the rim, doing a lot of the defensive duties, with Bol just as just a freaky big dude just out there on top of that. So pretty big lineup. Jalen Williams with like crazy good defense. So Dame Lillard can really just do what Steph Curry does, just run around and shoot, run around and shoot, run around and shoot. Because he's got big guys that can defend and score. And trust me, I get Bol hasn't made a huge impact in this modern NBA, but I do believe he has some talent, and I think this guy could really score. I don't think people should sleep on Bol. Again, his height at the small forward position would be insane. With other like legit bigs at the four and the five, like Bobo could really just like abuse mismatches in lineups at the small forward position. So I like this team, solid team in my opinion. But rest of the bench, they got Spencer Dinwiddie, other guys. I won't name them all, but that's it. Let's move on. Okay, another random team, just another random team that was filling out the rest of the guys. So Jared Allen, he ended up as their first draft pick to this Utah Jazz team. They got Jared Allen, Tyler Hero, Jalen Suggs, Michael Porter Jr., Herb Jones. They got Russell Westbrook, which was kind of interesting. Jordan Clarkson, Mitchell Robinson. Their bench is not bad. These like three dudes off the bench that are pretty decent, and then the rest of the guys. All right, moving on. Okay, so this is the reconstructed Bad Boy Pistons, and honestly, it's one of the teams I'm the most excited about watching and seeing what they do. Is this team anywhere near as good as the OG Bad Boy Pistons? I guess we'll find out. I'm gonna say probably not, but we'll have to see. Maybe they'll make a splash in the NBA. But you got Kyrie Irving as Isaiah Thomas, Demontis Sabonis as what is his name? There's just too many names to remember right now. So and I'm drawing a blank. So I won't even say. But yeah, Sabonis, Jalen Duran, Isaiah Stewart. Now I made this is another mistake I made, but I'll explain it when I get to the original Pistons. But Isaiah Stewart is supposed to be Dennis Rodman. I made him a small forward, and I'm okay with that. Jalen Duran at the four and Sabonis at the five. This is a strong, big lineup. And I honestly think you're going to have a hard time rebounding the basketball if Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duran, and Sabonis is on the floor. They got a big lineup that can pretty much like protect the paint from anybody trying to attack the basket, and opposing big men or big teams will basically have a hard time scoring in the post. I believe with three solid big men at the 3, 4, and the 5. They got Lou Dort as their shooting guard, and then Kyrie just doing Kyrie things. Score probably doing some crazy, crazy scoring to carry the offensive load of the team. Just hopefully he doesn't get injured. But all right, another random team with the star Seattle SuperSonics player Gary Payton. So Gary Payton ended up in New York. I like this team because of the fact that they have the Thompson twins. So Gary Payton's gonna lead this squad with Amon Thompson and Asar Thompson. He's got Dyson Daniels as his shooting guard and Miles Turner at the five. I like this lineup personally, and I think this is a good look for New York. Will they be able to hang with a lot of the OG teams? Some of these powerful lineups. Probably not, but we'll see. Let's not underestimate Gary Payton. Let's see what the Thompson twins can do together on the same team. I think Miles Turner is a solid big man, but he's gonna have a tough job against some of the more dominant big men that's gonna be in this league. But and then Dyson Daniels is okay. So let me finish on the rest of the bench. So Malik Beasley, and I will not name everybody else. They got Kevin Love. Anyway, all right, moving on. Showtime Lakers. Now, right away, there should be something that stands out. When I originally created this team, I created it with Magic Johnson, Byron Scott, James Worthy, AC Green, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I forgot all about Michael Cooper, and I felt like he couldn't be left out, so I included him with the Showtime Lakers. The new clone team of them does not have a Michael Cooper clone. Michael Cooper's overall is higher than Byron Scott, which means he will be the starting shooting guard. He was such a significant piece to that Laker squad that I'm thinking that I might have messed up in not including him with the clone team, but I think we still are okay being that the big three significant players, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and James Worthy, are included as the top guys on this clone Showtime Lakers team. So I think that in and of itself is probably enough to give us a fair comparison of the matchup. But yeah, so Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Michael Cooper, Byron Scott. Like I said, coming off the bench, might play the point guard position honestly. AC Green, and then they randomly have PJ Washington. So I don't know. He's now a Showtime Laker apparently. They randomly have Nate McMillan, and that's the rest of the squad. I like that they got Josh Richardson and KCP. So kind of interesting dudes, but probably either won't play or get like little to no minutes. So moving on. Okay, another random created team. Jalen Brunson. I call this team light skinned because, dude, look how many light skinned dudes they got in their main lineup. Like Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart. Oh, Josh Hart's position, I think he's like a 3 or 4 man or something like that. I actually turned him into a shooting guard, so I kind of did some manipulation of some players, but Josh Hart is one of them where I just figured like if you got Kuzma and Gordon that are bigger players, let them play the 3 and the 4. Put Josh Hart to the 2. He's 6'4" anyway. I get that he plays much bigger than his height suggests, but I think he belongs at 2. It's interesting too that these guys are teammates and they just randomly ended up together on the Orlando Magic through the draft. But I like the rest of their roster construction. Besides Brunson and Josh Hart, they got Nikola Vucevic at the 5, Aaron Gordon at the 4, Kyle Kuzma at the 3. Interesting lineup to say the least. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how well they do. But this is one of the, like I said, random squads, and then this is their bench. So again, like most teams, the bench kind of falls off a bit once you go past the starting five. So, well, anyway, all right, this was interesting. So, and this is worth mentioning here now that you're seeing the second LeBron team that is on the Dallas Mavericks. Just so happened to be a bitter rival to that Miami Heat squad. That Dallas Mavericks team that beat Miami. A lot of people feel like that was like the biggest knock on LeBron James's career. Well, now this version of LeBron James can kind of like right the wrong, I guess, by being a Dallas Maverick and seeing if he can win in this uniform in their city. So now the reason why I chose this team to put LeBron on is because with majority of majority of the teams and their clone teams, I put majority of the clone teams in the opposite conference of them. I specifically wanted to do that just to see how each would fare in their own conference apart from each other. And so they don't overlap all in the same conference. I suppose I could have put them in the same conference, but then you would have all 20 of them somehow in one conference. And even though I added more teams, there's only a total of 18 teams in each conference. Um, and so yeah, that actually logistically wouldn't have even been possible. So just to kind of balance things, I put their clone equivalent, I think in most, if not all the cases, in the opposite conference, which meant that the Miami LeBron team, their clone team would have had to be in the West instead of the East. So that removed Cleveland as a possibility. And obviously I couldn't put them on the Lakers because I got one too many teams that deserve to be Lakers, Showtime, and Shaq and Kobe. So I thought, what better place to put them than just so happened to be a rival of the Miami Heat. I decided to put the clone team on the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Anthony Davis is already there now. And so LeBron and Anthony Davis, they're essentially reunited in Dallas, and they got alongside them Anthony Edwards um, as the Wayne Wade clone, essentially. Another thing, so Robert Williams is the Udonis Haslam of this team, and Davion Mitchell is supposed to be Mario Chalmers. When I was actually looking at Davion Mitchell and Mario Chalmers, I think Davion Mitchell might actually be a better player than Mario Chalmers, at least was or whatever. So, and randomly, the team ended up picking Malik Monk as just like an extra guy. Malik Monk just so happens to have a better overall rating than Davion Mitchell, so that means he'll actually start over him. And honestly, I'm not mad at it. It's not like Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk. Either one would make a big difference as the like Mario Chalmers comparison. So I just decided to just leave it as is and not change it. Not trying to not try to change or influence the way the randomization happened in this case. So yeah. So the team has Malik Monk and Davion Mitchell as the sixth man, I guess, of the team. So the rest of the bench, random guys. They got Pat Bev, I guess. He's 36 now, an older player, but he's still in the league. Probably will retire soon, but he just somehow ended up on this lineup. And again, the rest of the team, nah, some of these guys are in real life are not all that bad. They just don't have high overall ratings in 2K. But anyway, moving on. Paul Pierce. All right, so this is the big three Celtics. So this was another team that I had to relocate. Since Boston is already occupied by the '80s Celtics, I wanted to give the more OG teams their original teams, which mean that the big three Celtics has to play somewhere else. What better place to be than the place that they actually ended up at? I don't know if all of them, because Ray Allen went to Miami. Rondo, I think, stayed in Boston, but Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett ended up in Brooklyn. So they actually ended up in Brooklyn in real life. So I thought, since they got to occupy a different team, what better place to put them than the Brooklyn Nets? So the Brooklyn Nets has Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, Kendrick Perkins, and randomly Al Horford. He just ended up here randomly. I don't, I don't know how he got drafted, but yeah. So then you can see the rest of the lineup. They got Aaron Wiggins and T.J. McConnell. They actually got a okay bench. They got Jonathan Isaac too, who I do like, Jonathan Isaac, an older Kyle Lowry. So he's still out there hooping at nearly 40 apparently. So all right, that's the big three Celtics. All right, moving on. Okay, in my opinion, this isn't the best team, but it's one of the better. How should I say? It's one of the lineups that I think is just interesting because of Shea. So SGA is one of the best players in today's NBA who just so happened to not be on one of these newly constructed clone teams. So he got drafted as the first overall pick for the Denver Nuggets. And if you're wondering where's Jokic, I will show you in a minute when we get to his team. But the teams that weren't specifically selected by me to have them with their specific lineups were all randomized. So Shea ended up with the Denver Nuggets. They ended up drafting Mikal Bridges, John Collins, Jacob Podol, and Devin Vassell. I don't think this team is too different from the current Thunder team, because you pretty much got Shea and then a bunch of like solid young role players. I think Shea really carries that team to another level, just because he's a incredible point guard that can definitely lead that team in scoring, playmaking, and not a bad defender either. So, but yeah, so I'd like to see what Shea actually does with this team. But moving on, and then yeah, this is the bench essentially. We got Jabari Smith Jr., Gabe Vincent, other guys, pretty pretty uh pretty random. So all right, moving on. All right, here we go. Jokic. This is the team that is the 2000 Spurs equivalent. This is the Duncan Spurs clone team with Jokic playing at the power forward position, matching up against Tim Duncan. You got Jalen Brown, Darius Garland, Austin Reeves, Nimhart, who is actually their sixth man. Their center is Jonas Valanciunas. Again, another team that I'm pretty curious to see how they do and how they match up. Um, I don't know. I'm taking a lot of the OG teams over some of these newer teams, especially the Spurs team. I don't know, but we'll have to see. We'll just have to see how this plays out. Can the OG players beat out the new players? We will find out. We will find out. Will play styles of the modern NBA prevail and be more successful than the you know original NBA? I guess we'll find out. Anyway, rest of the bench, and let's move on. Okay, another random team. This ended up getting Paolo Banchero, Jamal Murray. Jaden McDaniels, Mark Williams, Brandon Miller. Kind of a random team. I like to see Jamal Murray on a whole new team. See how he does. I think he's a phenomenal player. Doesn't really stand out as much with when he's paired with Jokic, but let's see how he'll do with a different guy. He's playing with Paulo Banchero, and the rest of the lineup's kind of decent, but not great. Decent players. We got Jaden Ivey off the bench, and that's the rest of the bench players. All right, let's move on. All right, OG Detroit Pistons. Now, this is the thing that I got to talk about. I forgot when I was originally making my list prior to making the teams in 2K. Um, I forgot that Rodman was actually at the power forward position, not the small forward position, because I forgot about a whole player that's in their starting lineup, which is Mark Aguirre. Forgot that Mark Aguirre was the starting small forward. So they had Isaiah Thomas at the one, Joe Dumars at the two. Rodman was actually the four, even though he could play small forward and probably occasionally did slide to the three. So I'm sure he played a little of both. But in the starting lineup, he was their starting power forward. And then Bill Laimbeer, the guy I forgot his name when I was talking about their clone team or whatever. So Sabonis is the Laimbeer equivalent in today's NBA. But yeah, Mark Aguirre will be the starting small forward, and this team randomly got Jonathan Kaminga, and honestly, I like it. I like it. I mean, I think he fits that OG Detroit Pistons squad. He might make a bit more of an impact to this team than he should. I don't know. Could change the history of Bad Boy Pistons. I don't know. But he got randomly drafted here, and I like him. I like him with this team. They also got Caruso, and also on this team. So this is the bench. You'll notice here's John Sally. Um, I remember John Sally as being a part of the Pistons. I think he's more well known, uh, to today, being that he's done a lot of interviews and stuff like that. So he's had a lot to say about both his time with the Pistons as well as with the Bulls. Um, but he couldn't have been too much of a key contributor given the fact that his overall is pretty low. So he might not even play, honestly, because he's coming off the bench, and this guy has a better overall than him, and obviously so does Kaminga. So John Sally might not even play, but he's on the team anyway. So I guess it's fitting. Whatever. He ended up in Detroit with his bad boy Pistons, even though he's probably going to be a non factor or whatever. But it is what it is. All right, moving on. Okay, this is the last team because this one's back to the Rockets. So this is the last team. I decided to spice it up and add one more team of interest to the league. Another reason why I thought that it would be fitting to add six more teams to the NBA, three to each conference, going from 15 in each conference to 18 in each conference. A total team count of 36. So going from a 30 team league to a 36 team league. It's because I've added so many additional players, and I felt like it's only wise to kind of spread them out instead of trying to pack them all together in fewer teams. So you got this team. This is the team that is my team of all time favorite players. So when I was young and I got really into basketball, this was the early 2000s, and to me, Ray Allen or not Ray Allen, Allen Iverson to me was the man, followed by Vince Carter and Carmelo Anthony and Tracy McGrady, and then I threw Dwight Howard in at the end because I really didn't really have like a all time favorite like big man per se. But but this is a lineup of all my favorite players. So we got Iverson, Carter, Carmelo playing the four, Tracy McGrady playing the three. So we got the cousins duo. I took the best version of Tracy McGrady, and best versions of the other players. I took Denver Nuggets Melo because that was my favorite Melo. Obviously, I'm inspired by Iverson and Melo with the braids. So these were my favorite players growing up. I when Vince Carter was in the dunk contest and won, uh, man, that was like phenomenal. As a young kid, seeing Vince Carter, and then Tracy McGrady was super popular as a player. A lot of people wanted his shoes, his Tracy McGrady shoes or whatever. Um, and then for big men, I would just say yes, definitely Dwight Howard is one of my favorite big men. I do really like Giannis, but Giannis is on the team. So I really like Dwight Howard too. He was when he came into the league, you know, he was very dominant physically, great defensively, and just a big strong center. Um, I definitely love the impact that Dwight Howard made, and I gave myself a pretty good six man too. I got DeMarcus Cousins, another one of my favorite big men. Because when I saw DeMarcus Cousins, he moved phenomenally well. He had a nice touch with the shot, and he was just a bully in the post. And he went head to head with anybody, like Tim Duncan, you name it. Like if they was in the league and they was a big man, he was trying to bully them and dunk on everybody. So I really like DeMarcus Cousins. He's got a little bit of a three ball and a little bit of a handle for a big guy his size. So this is my team. My team is honestly probably more stacked than any other team. This might negatively influence the league because my team of all time favorites might win, and if they do, so be it. Because honestly, the rest of the league, it's most important. Only one can come away with the championship. It's just most important to see, what teams fare better than others in this all time league, and yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have fun playing with my favorite players of all time. Which leads me to my next thing. So, the way the format is gonna work out is there are extra teams, but there aren't extra games in the season. Meaning that there's gonna be the regular 82 games. There's gonna be All Star. I think there's gonna end up being a play-in tournament in this, and then the playoff format should be the regular playoff format including the play in, if I'm not mistaken. So all that's going to be in the regular league. With 82 games, there's a lot of games to play through. I will not be playing all 82 games. I will be simulating the majority of the games. And I want me playing to have like the least impact or influence on what happens. So again, I'm going to simulate the majority of them. The first 40 games, what I plan on doing is playing one out of every 8 games. And then when I get to the 41st game, I will play that one as well, which would conclude the first half of the NBA, of the first half of the 82 games. I'm going to play one out of 8 games, and I will strictly be playing with my favorite team of all time, this Raptor squad. When I get to the second half of the season, I'm gonna play 1 in 4 games, but I'm gonna randomly select one of the other teams to play with, essentially, just so that I can get a little play time with some of the other teams, and then I will be also simulating doing a live simulation of some of the all-time matchups to see how the OG teams would compare with the new clone teams. that might honestly be a tricky thing to try to figure out because there's just so many teams. Um, and honestly, I don't know exactly how the schedule is going to be for each team, but we'll look at that in a second too. Um, you'll just have to bear with me as I kind of figure this out as I go along, but we'll see. What else? What else? So this ought to be a lot of episodes in total before we get to the conclusion of the season, and then the playoffs is going to be its own separate thing as well. So hopefully whoever's watching enjoys this. If you do, definitely leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. I would personally appreciate that. And leave me a comment if there's any suggestions you want to give me, whether it's like feedback. I'll take any constructive criticism. Don't mind too much. And any kind of comments you want to say about like if you think there's something I should do, if you got a suggestion or whatever, like just let me know. Or if you like what I'm doing, leave a comment just saying anything just about. So
I just touched a bug.
a bug.
Yeah, it's a
Oh, okay.
bug on the down.
Okay, don't touch no bug.
I just got, I just got my bug.
Okay. Anyway, all right, all right. Yeah, and then if you want me to edit out every interruption, let me know too. It's just gonna take a lot more work to do that. And the heck happened?
Daddy, it is calling wow. It is calling wow.
Okay, for
Daddy,
some random reason the video crashed. I will pause this for a second. All right, I will shortly conclude this video because it's already gone on long enough. But this was essentially a setup video. Hopefully, I explained stuff well. This is all off the top of my head. No script, So bear with me as I try to, work this stuff out. But one more thing I'll explain. So I did adjust the some settings, particularly in regards to injuries. I want injuries to be as least impactful and least influential in the outcome of the season. Yes, injuries are a thing. There will be very minor injuries that will occur, but I basically turned down the sliders on how frequent an injury happens and the severity of an injury, as well as I completely removed career ending injuries because it could randomly happen and a career ending injury would just like it would just ruin the purpose of this league. If I were to allow career injury, let's say to Michael Jordan, and then Michael Jordan doesn't play, and then we don't know if Michael Jordan would just somehow be better than all these other teams and players. We wouldn't know because Michael Jordan just got taken out randomly by computer randomization. And again, it could still be a rare occurrence if I did add it in the game. I just didn't want that to be a factor at all. So it's possible to get injured. It's just not possible to get a significant injury or be out for a significant amount of time due to injury. So the majority of the league will be, we'll get to see the best play the best, mostly void of injury. So as injuries occur, again, at random, we'll just have to see who gets injured and what impact that it has. So we'll kind of closely follow that. I want to start off by taking my Raptor squad that I'm playing with and then looking at a little bit of their schedule. So the first game I have to play is versus the
it
Detroit
got
Pistons, which is
there. It
awesome.
got there, Daddy. Got there.
Okay, this is the bad boy Pistons, and I'm very curious to see how I would match up with the bad boy Pistons. Honestly, I think I'm gonna wipe them because the computer ain't too difficult for me to play. So stay tuned for that episode 2, and then I'm gonna simulate the following 7 games. So this is Knicks, Grizzlies, Suns, this Baron squad, Magic, Pacers. Let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Ooh. Okay, so back to back games where I'm playing the Spurs.
Also,
Okay, baby. Spurs and the Spurs clone. But again, I have to simulate a certain number of games just so that we can progress quickly through the season, and this series not take forever. Plus, the fewer games that I play, especially early on, the less impactful that it's going to have to stuff like all star selections and just the overall like records of teams and stuff like that heading towards playoffs and stuff like that. So I'm gonna play games, but I'm gonna play fewer games than more games essentially, and then um, the second half of the season is where I'll play like a little more games. But again, I will play with some of these other squads and stuff like that, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Exactly how I'm gonna play it out, but we'll see, we'll see. And then, like I said, I'll try to mix in, especially in the second half of the season. I'll probably try to mix in more of watching specific matchups of just the computer playing the computer. So I don't know. I don't know if people would prefer seeing that or seeing me play one or the other, but we'll see. Anyway, but that'll conclude this video, and then I'll come back for episode 2 where I'll play a game. So peace. See y'all in the next one.